Hello and welcome to the podcast, Life's Second Act. This is the podcast that delves into the transformative phase of later life, exploring its challenges, new directions and uncertainties that come with it. And we do that through talking to people who have a story to tell, an insight to share, or a snippet of something special. My name is Simon Burgess, and in this episode we speak to Neil Pitts.
I broke everything down my right side, pelvis 3 places, all my ribs, my shoulder, my wrist. It was very unpleasant. But the first thing I thought when I realised that I wasn't horribly badly broken was, this too shall end. If you make a change, it might be scary. You might think, oh, well, is it safe to do this? Will I be okay? Will I be able to pay the bills? Even thinking like that is just an excuse to not do it, I think. Do what you want to do and accept that you will be okay. And the reality is you'll probably be better than okay.
Neil is horrified to discover that he is 60 and would call himself an amateur adventurer. He's in love with the outdoors with a particular passion for mountaineering and backcountry Nordic ski touring. He's a wannabe writer and occasional artist. His career spans 44 years and includes working in a bank from 16, which he admits he hated. He was a police officer for 10 years, a job he loved. He has, since leaving the police in 1999, worked in a learning and development role with police services across the UK, including working for a few years as a full-time training manager for one of the biggest defence companies in the world. Working, though, has never got in the way of his true passions. Since the age of 29, he has travelled the world, including travelling solo to Asia and Canada. He's also worked as a mountain guide in Pakistan, and it was on one of these guiding trips that he met his wife, Amanda. He has traversed the Tyrolean Alps in Austria, hiked across the Pyrenees, and regularly spends extended periods travelling with Amanda across the Alps and Spain for climbing. In 2020, though, COVID hit him hard, and for almost 2 years he battled with long COVID. That said, as soon as he was fit enough, he was heading to Norway with a view to skiing the length of it, writing a blog and recording an audio diary for BBC Radio Berkshire and Hereford and Worcester as he went. On his return, he spent 3 months writing a book about his experiences, which he's still looking for a publisher. Neil, thank you for joining me today.
Hello, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So Neil, I think if there's anybody I've met, I think you embody the art of working to live. And I'm hoping today, through our conversation, I can learn a little bit more about how you've managed to do that and what we can learn as we move forward in life to get that right balance between work and play. I'm also interested to know how you bounced back after having long COVID and more about that trip to ski the length of Norway. But before we delve into that, let me ask you, we use these words like finding direction and finding purpose. What comes to mind from your point of view?
I think a lot of people define themselves by their job. One of the first questions that people ever ask you, they say, oh, hello, how are you? What do you do? And I hate that question. And I very, very rarely ask that question myself because I don't define myself by what I do. I define myself by the experiences I have and the experiences that I've done throughout my life. Early on, I decided I wanted to live a particular kind of life. I wanted to do lots of experiences, see the world. That's how I define myself, not by the fact that I have to have a job to pay to do it.
Where would you put yourself on the scale at the moment of 1 to 10? 10 being, got life sorted, it's great, wouldn't want to change a thing, to 1, I have no idea what I'm doing and where I'm going. Where would you put yourself on that scale?
I'd probably say about 7, maybe 8. Yeah, everything's pretty good, but there are certain things that I would definitely change if I was able to.
Sounds pretty good. I've listed a few of your achievements and it looks like 60 is still not holding you back. But let's wind back a little bit. When did this all start? Can you tell me the sort of the moment in your life where you feel that you were going to take a different approach to life?
Yeah, so I left school at 16. I was, and always have been, and hated exams. So I left school as soon as I possibly could. And I joined the bank. Don't ask me why. I didn't like it from day one. And on my very, very first day in the bank, I was taken around by the manager at the time, whose name I don't remember. And he was just sort of showing me around, introducing me to people. And we went back down into the bowels of the bank where they kept the safe, and there was a little tiny office down there and a stationery cupboard. And hiding down there, doing something, I don't know what it was Mr. Mullis, the sub-manager. And he was sort of facing away as we walked towards him. And very distinct in my memory. The bank manager said, "Oh, hello, Mr. Mullis, this is Neil, he's new." And he sort of looked at me, this naive 16-year-old in an ill-fitting suit, and he just said, "I pity you, 40 years in this place." And he just turned back and carried on with what he was doing. He was due to retire. And I've never forgotten that. And I think that was probably the turning point. It took me 7 years to leave the bank, but I think from that point on I'd kind of realised, I don't want to spend 40 years in a claustrophobic environment of work.
I guess in hindsight, though, it sounds like that could have been one of the best things that's happened to you.
It certainly was, because my dad had always said, we clashed when I decided to wanted to leave the bank because I hated it. And he said, "You're supposed to hate your job." He said, "It's not about," he said, "basically, this is how it works," he said. And these were his exact words. He said, "You get a job, you get married, you have children, and eventually you retire. And that's it." I said to him, "Why?" And he said, "Well, that's just it. And for my dad's generation, it was. You needed that security. Now it's quite different. Back when I did it, I was really a rarity to change jobs at all.
So this was the start of you taking a different approach to the norm. What happened next?
So initially, when I first left the bank, I left the bank because I hated it. And I went off and I joined the police. I didn't join the police because I had a drive to become a police officer and right the wrongs of the world. I joined it because they were recruiting, and it was for the Ministry of Defence Police. It wasn't for the Home Office Police. And I ended up working at RAF Greenham Common. And I left because the money was good, and I got to leave home eventually, or finally. And then I became a little bit bored with that because basically I was a glorified security guard, and I joined the Home Office Police and joined the West Midlands Police, where I spent the next 9 years or so, on and off. And I'd never really thought about it. I just thought, well, that's me. And I really enjoyed the job. So it's a very, there's lots and lots of variety in being a police officer. You never know what's going to happen next. So it's just really good. And I like that. The one thing it gave me that I always wanted was I knew, and I'd made a decision very early on, that I always wanted to do a job that had some kind of, felt like it had value. It was a girlfriend at the time who we started seeing each other, and she said, well, we can go out for a while, it's really nice, but I'm going to Japan. I'm going to go and teach in Japan, and when I go, that's it. And she said, but you could do this kind of thing. Why don't you do it? And she kind of encouraged me to think, well, yeah, I could. And I ended up booking onto an expedition, went out to Indonesia, and actually ended up teaching in Japan myself for a while. And so by that time, I was a 29-year-old policeman. In many ways, I was still quite naive. I'd seen the things that a policeman sees, and I'd done all of that kind of stuff, and I was confident, but I was still afraid of people in authority. I was still afraid of people who were older than me. And by basically spending nearly 2 years traveling mostly on my own, I grew up. I really did grow up. And I came back thinking, well, I can actually do whatever I want to do now. I really can.
Was that confidence always there? Was that something that you had to work on, and that sort of self-belief?
The thing that I hated when I first started work was the fact that I was so naive. I was so utterly afraid of my own shadow. I was scared of speaking to people older than me in an authority position, and I hated it, absolutely hated it. But I realised that I needed to deal with this. And so everything I did for many years after that, at least 10, possibly longer years after that, was always a conscious attempt to give myself more confidence. So when the job with the police came up, I just thought, well, this is going to really help me. The Ministry of Defence Police is not like the Home Office Police. It's very, very militaristic, and I learned to march, I learned to salute, and polish my boots and creases in my sleeves and all that kind of stuff. So that gave me that confidence. of the whole course that joined, I think there were 2 of us who weren't ex-military. So there was a confidence there that gave me. And then I joined the Home Office Police, and you suddenly you kind of think, oh yeah, I've made it. And then you join the Home Office Police and you stand on that step on your very first day out on foot patrol on your own, and you just think, dear, am I as confident as I think? And because I was still quite young. I was only 23, and by the time I got to 20, I struggled with the first few years with the police. I wasn't a natural. I had to learn. I had to really fight it. But I got there in the end, and within a couple of years, I was doing really, really well. And then I got to 29, and I just thought, yeah, I've done that now. And when this girlfriend said, well, you could go traveling, I thought that would be my next growth. I remember walking down a street in Kathmandu, and I was looking around, I was thinking, I'm having an absolutely fantastic time, and I've done some amazing things. I was just thinking, it's just how, I have no idea how I got here. It's marvellous. But I got myself here, and I thought, I know the name now of my autobiography. It is Never Underestimate Your Average Bank Clerk. And
great title.
And so I think from that point, it's always been a confidence, and I've got this confidence that I never thought I would get.
That's brilliant. Are you happy to change direction again now? When retirement's on the horizon here, isn't it?
Because of the way I work, no, retirement is not on the horizon. But I like change. I get really fed up. I live near Reading, and it's the longest I've lived anywhere. I've always moved, and I've already got itchy feet to go and live somewhere else. There's so much of the world I still want to see, and to do that, I might have to change. I don't think I would. No, would I change my career? Yeah, absolutely, I would. If I could find a way of going and living in the Pyrenees in France, and a job that allowed me to do that, then yeah, absolutely, I'd do that at the drop of a hat. I'm not afraid of change, but I have, turning 60. It's kind of made me think, well, I'm running out of time to do some of these things, although I've still got at least 15, 20 years of health and fitness, hopefully. So why not change? Why not?
So, but you've worked hard at that from 16, and you had that moment back in the bank which changed your attitude to life. You've then worked on your confidence. So I guess it feels quite natural that you've got those abilities within you. What would you say to those 45, 50, 55? What can they do you think, to still embrace?
To embrace change, possibly.
I guess to embrace change.
The first step is the hardest. And that's the thing you've got to realise. I've got friends who do jobs that they don't like. And they look at me and they go, the job I do to pay the money to do the things that I like to do, I enjoy that. But I'd encourage people, as you get older, that's the time to change, isn't it? I mean, you just got to take that first step. You do need kind of some direction. You've got to have an idea what you're going to do. You can't just go, it's like people who retire and they go, I'm going to retire, it's going to be great. Well, but what are you going to do with that retirement? I hadn't thought of that. Well, you need to think about that. And if you've got an urge to stop working in the bank and become a gardener, then you just got to take that step if that's what you really want to do. But there's a fear there, and it's entirely understandable. We all have bills to pay, and we all have to pay the mortgage. Many people have children that they have to look after. I've always said, I'll always be all right. It might be tricky, there might be some stumbling blocks, but I know that I'll always be all right. I'm not going to end up on the streets.
Well, where's that come from? Because you say you'll always be all right. That's brilliant. But has that come from some built belief system, or just the fact that you've been around for 60 years and you've done okay and you're here and you got to this point? Is it that gives you the confidence that it'll be all right?
It was something my dad said when we were young, and I was probably, 12, 14. I remember saying, we'll always be all right. And I thought, yeah, you're probably right. We'll always be, whatever happens, we'll always be. And that kind of stuck with me. But then as I went through my life, I changed and changed and changed and changed. I ended up I've lived in Canada, I've lived in Japan, I've lived all over the place. And I've always known, because I've got the right mindset, because I'm happy to go and work as a removal man for a few days to get or shovel snow or do whatever, I'll always be all right.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've heard the expression before, a belief is like a tabletop. Just as a tabletop is supported by multiple legs, a belief is sort of supported by multiple reasons or pieces of evidence. So I guess in your case, I guess it would be that your dad said that you would always be okay, and you've sort of gone through change many times in your life, and you've been okay, and so on.
Yeah.
Where are the benefits of adopting this attitude to life? Where are you definitely working to live?
I can't even imagine having a 9-to-5 job with 2 weeks holiday a year. That said, I'm doing a contract at the moment, which is probably going to run for more than a year, and I will only be getting normal holidays. But every now and again, both my wife and I have to go through this period where we work for a while, and then we have a big plan for 2025 to go and do a big trip in Norway. The benefit is you don't have 2 weeks holiday. 2 weeks holiday to me, that's basically the decompression time. 3 weeks holiday is a real sort of minimum. But the vast majority of the time when Amanda and I go, as my wife, we go away for months at a time. We get in our camper van and we disappear off to the Alps, and we come back. Used to be 4 months later, then Brexit happened. 3 months later. I have no idea how people go on holiday for 2 weeks and then come back refreshed. You come back, you just about manage to recharge your batteries a bit, but then you're back straight back into it again. I just couldn't do that. Fitness, I've been doing fitness stuff. I don't think it would make any difference. I mean, I go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, and I cycle a lot, and I climb and do that kind of stuff. So that would happen anyway. But if you spend 3 months climbing in the Alps, when you come back, we're always super fit. The one advantage that I have to the whole of this is I found the right partner. Amanda and I have very similar aims and goals and wants. We both feel exactly the same way about full-time jobs. We both did full-time jobs for 6 years at one point, and it was good in its way, but we were really happy when I got made redundant and Amanda just handed in a notice, and we just got in the van and got in the car on that occasion and just disappeared for 4 months. But even then, there's still an except that this is a different time. We disappeared once for 3 months after my contract had ended. Amanda had got made redundant, and we went away. And we were really pushing our luck. This was the only time we'd pushed our luck financially. And we knew that when we came back, one of us had to find work within a month. Even if it was going down to Waitrose and stacking shelves, we had to get a job within a month. And that's, occasionally we push it, but that's pretty rare. But having that partner who wants to do the same thing.
But you've still got to have that right kind of mindset to be able to still take yourself out and do those things, which I think is fantastic. Do you think it's ever too late to look for something new? And
90 maybe? No. Why would you? There's a growing trend. I mean, if people in their 60s and 70s are going off travelling, and that's a great thing to do, but if you've just retired having done 45 years in a job, are you fit enough and healthy enough to do that? I really hope that most people are, but a lot of people retire and get sick straight away, and they could, but kind of miss the opportunity because they've not looked after themselves. Is that the right way? Not just physically but mentally as well.
Let me just pick up on that, because we know how mental strength can help us in our lives, and it's evident from your experiences and I guess your attitude towards life that it's played a big factor in what you've achieved. But in 2020 you got long COVID. Did that change you in any way?
Long COVID did get me down quite a lot. My mother got COVID in the early days in March of 2020. It was at a time when she's disabled and she lived in a nursing home, but they did allow me, my brothers sacrificed me because they both had underlying health conditions, and so they allowed me to go and sit with her. And sadly, she died during the 2 days that I was with her. It was early days. I was convinced I was fit, healthy, completely bomb-proof, and I wasn't as good as I should have been with my mask, and because it's my mum, I wanted to hear what she was saying. I got too close. And so I picked it up. I got it. I was really very, very ill with COVID. I was taken to hospital twice, although I never got admitted. I'm overjoyed to say, because that would have been bad. I don't remember much about a number of weeks that Amanda's had to fill me in. I wrote it down for my book, and I didn't know. Amanda had to tell me everything. And then I started to get better, and then I started to get these weird and wonderful symptoms. Long COVID hadn't even been coined at the time as a thing, but it had started to be recognised that people were having additional problems. And I battled this thing called long COVID for 18 months. And for the first March until January the following year, my symptoms just got worse and worse and worse. And I'd pick up a new something. And that was really getting me down after that period of time. I couldn't do very much. And my normal positivity every now and again, because I just think, I'll be fine. I think I'll be fine in a year. I'll be fine. And I decided that I would be fine. But anyway, I kept a diary, and these tiny, tiny improvements started to appear in the January. And I thought, that's it. I'm definitely getting better. Might be slow, but I'm getting better. And my positivity came back. And I just thought, right, so what I need now, I need something to A, look forward to, and B, to train for, even though at the moment I can't fight my way out of a paperback. Serendipitously, I was chatting to a friend of mine. He's a climber. That's his job. He's a mountain guide. He's climbed Everest 10 times, I think. Yeah, it is 10 times. And my first question to him whenever I speak is, what's next? And he said, well, I'm going to go and ski the length of Norway. And he told me all about it. It's 2,700 kilometers, which is basically, to put that into perspective, if you were to walk from Land's End to John O'Groats, turn round and go back again, you still wouldn't have walked 2,700 kilometers. You'd have to then walk all the way. So if you'd started at Land's End, John O'Groats, back again, you'd still have to go back up to Bristol before you'd got to 2,000. So it's quite a long way.
It's a long way.
I'm a downhill skier, a good downhill skier. I've always wanted to Nordic ski, but I've never done it. And I went away thinking about it, and I was thinking, well, I wonder if I could do that. And he said, I'm skiing the first half on my own. I'm skiing the second half with a friend, a Norwegian friend, who's already done the first half. Spoke to Amanda about it, and I said, what do you think? And she said, well, ask him. So I went and asked, I said, could I come on this for the first half? So I've never been on Nordic skis in my life. And he said, well, it's just going for a walk with planks on your feet. It'll be fine. I said, of course you can. So I joined him, and then I was down for this first half of this thing. And then Amanda kept saying to me, why are you only doing half? I said, well, he's got someone else to do this. And he said, well, just ask him. So I asked him, he said, could I do all of it? And he said, yeah, why not? You'll be fine. So I was now on this thing, and I said to him, you have to bear in mind, I'm still really not very well. I'm still battling this. And by the September of that year, 2021, I finally declared myself fit enough. I'd still had this weird phantom smell, but that wasn't debilitating. So in the January, horribly unfit, still having never been on Nordic skis in my life, we started to ski. And we actually failed. We didn't do all of it.
So before you go on there, how long would that take, that journey?
So the estimated time is 120 days that David had decided. So 120 days allows for being stuck in a storm for a few days in a tent or a hut. There was an English girl, and her name escapes me at the moment, who's probably done the fastest ever version of it, and she did it in 90 days. Stupidly fit, amazing athlete, but she had a really unusually good weather year. Very, very rare in Norway. The vast majority of people, very, very few people ski Norge. It's called Norge Parlangs, which is Norway lengthways is how it translates. It's a very, very commonly done during the summer months hike, and it takes about 120 days to walk it. But in the winter, it's really, really rare because you have to go out in January and February in Norway, which is storm season. It's really extreme conditions, 100-mile-an-hour winds, minus 40, just hideous conditions. And you have to do it during that period. And that's the reason why the vast majority of people decide not to do it in the first place, and the ones that do it fail anyway. There was one other person doing it while we were doing it, a girl on her own with a dog. She got helicoptered out once, rescued by a ski scooter twice. She kind of did the whole thing, but she kept getting moved. And then, it was a bit weird the way she did it. But, she did it. And she was only 21. It's amazing that she did it on her own. But a very famous English couple started doing it a few years ago, and they got chased out of the mountains by bad weather after 70 days.
So your journey, you started well. What happened?
Didn't start well. We started on the 3rd of January 2022. And the first 5 days you have to walk. There's no snow, that latitude. So we walked for 5 days, and then we got onto the skis, and immediately we were into this horrible weather window. A week of storms were forecast. And we found out very, very quickly that it's not just walking with planks on your feet. Our more than 20 kilo rucksacks, no trails. The lakes that we'd expected to be completely frozen weren't. Day one, David went through the ice. It was not pretty, and basically this storm drove us out of the mountains, and it made us realise after 11 days that we weren't equipped for this. The storms were bigger than we'd expected. The equipment that we had with us, we had to get hut to hut. We didn't have a tent, and the huts were too far apart because of the weather conditions. So we basically, tail between our legs, scuttled off to Oslo, where we met up with a guy called Trond, who was going to join us for the second half. He introduced us to a guy called Christian, who was until about 2 weeks ago the record holder for the fastest person to ski to the South Pole. Christian basically lent us a load of stuff. He lent us a pulk, he lent us a tent, he lent us some cooking gear. And Trond said, go away and practice with that for 3 weeks, which we did. And we started again, basically, the three of us at a place halfway to the north. And we started again, just a mere 1,800 kilometres to go. And the three of us, and Trond and I completed it. It took us 60 days to ski about 1,800 kilometres. David had to quit after 18 days. He had a problem, a family issue, and he had to leave. But we did do it. The weather was horrendous. Trond always said to me, he said, one day you should come back and see what Norway actually looks like, and in the middle of whiteout number 50.
Do you still feel, though, that you didn't achieve what you set out, but are you still proud about what you have done? Because that's 60 days skiing in those kind of conditions, with a backpack.
Yeah, I'm ridiculously proud of myself for doing that trip. It's disappointing that I didn't do the whole thing, but the vast majority of people who tried this fail anyway. So the fact that we were able to start again and ski so far, and the fact that I was a terrible skier, Trond would openly laugh at me. By the end of it, I was skiing downhill through trees in the dark with a pulk behind me, and even Trond grudgingly accepted that I was a good skier at the end of this. So the fact that we didn't do all of it, it would have been great. I didn't expect to fail. I didn't start expecting to fail. I started expecting to finish. When we quit, David, who was the other guy who basically organised the whole thing, he was all to go home. And I said, I've got to do something out of this. And if he hadn't started with us, Trond and I would have carried on without him.
What did you learn from that experience? When you think about your personal life journey, all the places you've travelled to, anything that you learned about yourself or learned about life and journey and purpose from that? What did you take from that experience?
Interesting. Did I learn anything? I think it underlined certain things. It underlined that I have a very positive attitude. And that was the one thing that Trond said to me early on. He went home having skied. We did a practice ski together. And he went home and he told his family, and he didn't tell me this until much later, he told his family that the weakest link is by far Neil. I know 3-year-olds who can ski better than he can. But he very quickly and very kindly told me so straight away. He said it didn't matter because you had the right attitude. He said you would ski all day for 12 hours, pull in this pulk. And he said, I just potter along beside you because I've been skiing since I was 3. And he said you were utterly exhausted, but you were still smiling. You still thought everything was funny. If anyone fell over, you thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And you just had that. And you've got to have, when you're doing something so extreme, you've got to be in the middle of a whiteout that you didn't know was going to come. you can't find the huts that you're going to spend the night in. You've got to find it highly amusing that you're going to have to put a tent up in these 80-mile-an-hour winds and spend yet another night in the tent because it's too dark to carry on.
Yes, it's amazing. It's the sort of stuff you might see on some Netflix documentary. That's how I picture some of this stuff. So maybe one day, Netflix will be after you. You never know what's around the corner, do you?
No.
And you embrace that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't. I had a really serious accident in 2013. I got hit by a car when I was out cycling, and the car pulled out on me, and I hit it at about. I just looked at my speedo. I was doing 30 mile an hour. It was gently downhill. I broke everything down my right side, pelvis 3 places, all my ribs, my shoulder, my wrist. It was very unpleasant. But the first thing I thought when I realised that I wasn't horribly badly broken was, this too shall end. I was in a wheelchair for a couple of months. I was on crutches. I was on sticks. But I knew that I would be okay, I suppose. I didn't get paralysed. I was very, very lucky, which sounds a weird thing to say when you have such a bad accident. But I was lucky that I wasn't worse. Yeah, you just gotta have a positive attitude.
So what's next?
Norway in 2 weeks, just for 2 weeks, because I am doing a contract at the moment. It's a pretty gentle holiday. We are going Nordic skiing. We're basing ourselves in one place, and we'll ski out from a very nice self-catering place every day. So it's not going to be hard. We might do an overnight in a hut. The idea is that this is a bit of practice for Amanda, because next year, 2025, the aim is for the two of us to go back and do the bit that I missed, which is about 50 days and around 1,200 kilometres of Nordic skiing, pulling a polk. And Amanda's she's only done 2 weeks on Nordic skis, so it's going to be pretty hardcore for her. But she's really, really keen, because it's just a lovely thing to do, and she's certainly tough enough. So that's the aim for 2025. We definitely have to work for a while, because funds, we have to get savings and all that kind of stuff. Beyond that, we have 1 million. It's not a bucket list. We have a list. It's just a list, and it's everything. We love a journey. We would be more than happy if we had enough money to literally do a bit of a Forrest Gump and just walk out the front door and just keep going. We'd love to walk from Canterbury to Rome, not because we're religious, but there's a Camino, or a religious way, that goes all the way, and it takes 3 months. And what a great thing to just walk every day. How nice would that be? We want to walk across the Pyrenees again. We want to...
I love this. I just love the positive attitude that you've got to just getting out there and doing stuff. I find that quite difficult. My whole mindset with work is very different to yours. I went self-employed at 21. I'm very pleased and proud about my journey and what I've done, but it's definitely had that slant of work. And I think now in the years now, I'm starting to sort of reassess, I suppose, that balance between the years I've invested in work and other opportunities out there now. So when I hear your story, I just think it's absolutely fantastic. I really do.
But it is very different. I've always been very envious of people who have a job that they love, and I think that that's where you are. You loved your job, and although I've liked my job, I love it when 5 o'clock comes around and I get to go home, and I forget about it immediately. I've got one friend who could have retired years ago, but he loves what he does, and he will never stop doing it.
At the start you said, I think, was it a 7 on that scale? You put yourself at a 7 or possibly an 8. What would notch that up if we spoke again in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time? What would push that up?
If we could live in the mountains, that would push it way up there, and it's as simple as that. But it has to be the big mountains, and it's very, very difficult to do because of Brexit. We'd ideally move out to the French Pyrenees.
I have a feeling that won't stop you. I have a feeling that you will achieve that at some point. It sounds like with all the journey that you've been on and all those twists and turns, the where you started at 16, finding your confidence, believing in yourself that it'll be all right. I think that's going to happen. I look forward to...
You can come and stay.
Thank you. What about just one kind of final thought? Have you got a mantra or something that you just live by? A final thought?
Wherever you are, if you look at yourself, you know that you will always be all right. If you make a change, it might be scary. You might think, oh, well, is it safe to do this? Will I be okay? Will I be able to pay the bills? Deep down, you know it will be okay and you will be able to pay the bills. Even thinking like that is just an excuse to not do it, I think. Do what you want to do and accept that you will be okay. And the reality is you'll probably be better than okay.
What a lovely point to end on, Neil. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and I've really enjoyed hearing the journey that you've been on. So thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it and thank you for inviting me.
I really enjoyed that and I hope you did too. His positivity and attitude to life is just so admirable. And his mantra of "it'll be all right" flowed through the conversation even after that biking accident when referring to his recovery, saying this too shall end. And I love the fact that he'll be returning to Norway in 2025 to complete the other part of that walk, or should I say ski, with his wife Amanda. So that's it until next time. Until then, take care and goodbye.